but none of the neighboring countries are famous for their beautiful women. None. Belarus even has a video about how beautiful Belarusian girls are. Привет and greetings from Kiev, the capital of Ukraine. And welcome back to another Vodka Vodcast with me, Connor Klein. In today's episode, I'm going to be reacting to a video about the ladies of Latvia. And you know, I've reviewed several videos from this channel. The guy in it, even though he doesn't show his face, as far as I know, he travels around to lots of countries around the world, and he has been to several of them here in Eastern Europe, and I have reviewed those here on the channel. I will link the rest of the videos down below in the description if you want to hear about how he got on, what he said, and how I reacted to his videos about Belarus, Kazakhstan. We had Uzbekistan. I think we had Moldova, maybe we had another, we actually had one about Russian girls. So today it's about the Latvians. Now here on my channel, I of course advise you about lifestyle, about how to 5x your lifestyle by moving here to Eastern Europe, primarily to Ukraine, but also to Belarus is obviously quite often on this channel. Also neighboring Russia, biggest country in the world. Also a few videos about Moldova, been to Central Asia. I have not covered the Baltic states, we'll call them Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania so far on this channel, but I will get to them and I will vlog there and I will give you a little bit of comparison between what to expect. You know, if you were to come here or to go to the Baltic states, they were dealing with Latvia's, obviously give you my 2 cents on my previous experiences going to Latvia as a Western guy and going out and dating there, but also about the differences in the countries. I will do that at some stage. It is July 2021 when I'm making this video, and whilst slowly these COVID restrictions are starting to be reduced, still not completely open 100%. Everything in the West, in Western Europe, here in Ukraine, everything is open. There's hardly any difference to a normal period. Once you're in here, it is quite easy to come as well. I mean, sometimes you see some masks, but that's about it. Everything is open. Anyways, let's dive into today's reaction video. So let me pull up my phone. The title of the video is by Nomad TV, and of course I will link the original video down below if you want to go and watch the whole thing. I will take out some snippets of it now as I react to it, and yeah, you can watch the whole thing below. So the title of today's video is Hot Latvian Girls Can't Find a Suitable Partner. The shortage of Latvian men is your advantage. Now, I have to say, as I've said in many of the other reaction videos to Nomad TV, he writes pretty good titles to catch the attention. He gets a lot of views. This one, it's like, says it's 8 months old and he has 100,000 views. His channel has 130,000 subscribers. That's actually pretty good. He has other ones that obviously have millions of views with other clickbaity titles. Let's see what he says. Nomad TV. But none of the neighboring countries are famous for their beautiful women. None. Belarus even has a video about how beautiful Belarusian girls are. So no. Let's just see. The countries he names are Estonia, Latvia, and Belarus. Estonia, Lithuania, and Belarus. Estonia and Lithuania, pretty comparable to Latvia. And Belarus, beautiful Belarus. For many reasons, especially the beauty of the local women. So that is not true. Straight off the bat, in my humble opinion. And he says that's why Riga is called the sex tourist capital of the world. Now, we'll get into that. I think it may have had legitimately that title, maybe if it was sex capital of Europe at one stage, but that was in the past. Of course, everybody wants to meet beautiful girls, and if you happen to be from Latvia, perfect. So yeah, Nova TV tends to use B-roll, this kind of jingle, which is a bit annoying, Muzak, and then text to outline his points of view about wherever he's been. In this case, it's obviously Latvia. So you might be looking for your future wife, basically, whatever. This is the key. This is what we're really interested in. What are these women like? Blah, blah, blah. Come on. Here's a set of kind of a perv shot. The girl's legs. So here he says that they are sick and tired of stag parties, and in particular if you are British. And definitely that was the case in the past with most of the Baltic states, so Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania, same reputation. They had a phenomenon of mass stag parties. So that's bachelor parties coming from Western Europe, in particular from the United Kingdom. Just going to read a little bit because I did a little bit of research about it, because I remember back in the past, and that was actually when, Latvia would have been extremely cheap compared to UK. It's obviously still cheaper today, but it was extremely cheap at the time, and was back probably in about the early 2000s, and it continued probably up until, I don't know, late 2000, so even before 2010, because the prices have increased quite a bit in the Baltics when you go there. So in the summer of 2006, the UK edition of FHM magazine, this is like a very popular, at least it was a very popular men's magazine, not a pornographic magazine, but just a magazine that deals with men's, I guess. How would you describe it? It has like pictures of models and stuff, and advice for men, how to groom themselves and where to go and whatnot, have fun, like a lad's magazine, we can call it. Nominated, so FHM magazine, the UK edition, nominated Riga as the #1 stag party destination in Europe. And at the time you had, of course, the cheap Ryanair flights. Ryanair is a low-cost airline here in Europe. It's actually an Irish airline, being an Irishman myself. I'm not sure if I'm always so proud of that. But anyways, they had the cheap Ryanair flights. So basically you had this phenomenon of when Ryanair would start flying to a country, they would of course have lots of cheap flights. So it sounds great because then you can go there cheaply, but it also means there's a lot of cheap tourism, becomes a lot of cheap sex tourism in a lot of parts of Europe. That was a phenomenon. So they opened up the cheap Ryanair flights. I actually went and looked up for you, because I said that the prices have increased dramatically since those days, the early 2000s or mid 2000s in Latvia. I actually looked at the price difference between Riga and Kiev today, and actually prices for most things, I think it was outside of accommodation, were double in Riga than here in Kiev nowadays. So still a lot cheaper than being in London. Obviously it's going to be half the price, but it's not that, kind of thinking of that film, was it called Euro Trip, that kind of trashy teenage comedy where they go and I think they're in Bratislava in it, and they have a quarter and it's like having $1 million and stuff like that. That's definitely not the case if you go to Latvia today. And definitely I went to Latvia a few times, and there were quite a few stag parties still, and the local girls were really not interested in them, those kind of guys, and being Irish British, I had a standard to overcome. It's a bit like maybe an analogy here in UK might be, or in other parts of Eastern, being a Turkish guy. Like my Turkish friends tell me that they always have to explain that they're not like the rest of the Turkish guys. So if you're Brit and you go to the Baltics, it used to be like that. I'm not really so sure because the prices went up. They don't have that kind of stag party business like before. A lot of that has actually gone to Hungary. You don't see it so much here in Kiev, even though it's very cheap, thankfully. Not as much as you might expect, but definitely whenever I've gone to Hungary in the last few years, it has a lot of that. So it's kind of been, I guess, relocated to a certain extent. It's been, I guess they've just moved on to where it's more popular for that kind of tourism. Yeah, exactly. So he actually calls that out, and he says that nowadays all these, they also go to like Prague and to Budapest, which is the capital of Hungary, and they get shit-faced there, drunk, and they basically harass local women. Those places, those drunken Brits, darn. Yeah, so probably less of an issue, but that has kind of ruined, I guess, the reputation of being a foreign guy, especially from the West. Didn't create the best impression, so you will probably have to overcome that a little bit if you show up and you're in a group of lads on the lash in Riga. Yeah, so then he gives this, what you see always cited, which are the stats about gender inequality in terms of numbers. So there were more women in Eastern Europe than men. That's because there are a lot of babushke, grandmas. So unless you're into that age demographic, when I did it here for Eastern Europe, for Ukraine, it's actually, if you're under 35, more men than women. So don't buy into that. And he's brought it up. So then he kind of, I guess, argues that actually in universities there are a lot more girls than guys. Yeah, but that's nothing to do with the number of women and men who are under, say, 35 in the country. But yeah, that would be a great idea. Go to, like in particular, go to a language school. Anywhere basically in Europe, you're probably going to have a lot more girls than guys, and it's going to be good for you. So that is a good tip. I'm not sure if you really want to do the whole year student exchange in Latvia. Could be interesting. So then he talks about the fact that in terms of education, that that there are more educated Latvian girls than educated Latvian guys. That's only really going to play in if for you if we're talking about hypergamy and women trying to move up, across and up socioeconomically, and obviously if you have well concentrated into the hands of a few guys normally in a country, and then the kind of upper middle class are all dominated by women. Those women really struggle because there's only a few guys who are higher than them socioeconomically. Obviously, it's not like it's 100% women, but if you have a lot more women there, then they're looking for a partner who's at least on the same level socioeconomically. In general, it's just a general trend everywhere in the world. Maybe even a little bit more here in Eastern Europe. I'm going to count, I can't really count the Baltics as Eastern Europe today because obviously Latvia's joined the European Union back in 2004, so it was quite a long time ago, 17 years already. And I think just politically and culturally, whilst there is a bit of an overlap, that today it is more Northern Europe, I would say, or just specifically the Baltics, the Baltic states than Eastern Europe, even though it's about 50-50 in Riga between, we'll say, Russian speakers, so ethnic Russians, Ukrainians, and Belarusians versus ethnic Latvians. So, that's basically the way it is. So culturally in Riga is a bit mixed for that reason. But today I can't really say that it's Eastern Europe per se. So basically, let's dive into the next part where he's talking about, your advantage maybe of being a foreigner there. Yeah, next he says that Latvian women love foreign men. Let's see. Yeah, so basically he confirms that they're looking for hypergamy. There just aren't enough local guys who are socioeconomically higher than them. The thing about being alcoholic and whatnot, starting to be able to beer, the problem with that mainly, which is also in the message referred to domestic violence, obviously also something that is a negative, but the main issue is they don't go out and they don't make money. They're not ambitious in life as a result, or they don't have the education or the drive or the access to improve those socioeconomic. The guys who are obviously staying behind in Latvia because the standard of living there, well, first of all, the girls do better university overall, and then, as I said, if you're in this strata of, say, upper middle class to middle class, then there's probably less guys who are going to be same level or higher than you if you are a local girl, and that, of course, presents an opportunity to you if you are higher socioeconomically. Basically, that's the bottom line. Very simple, hypergamy in action, and you can take advantage of this. Well, you can, not just you take advantage, also the girl will be taking advantage of the fact that you can either go to Latvia or maybe meet a Latvian girl somewhere else, because she is looking for a guy who's going to be at least the same level or higher socioeconomically, and if you are that, then perfect. She's going to, for her interest, going to get a better deal, and also you, I assume. Girls in Latvia are on average better looking you're going to find in the West on average, so probably that's a good setup for both of you. Both going to be winners in that new liaison. So perfect. Exactly, it's going to be good for you because you're going to be perfect marriage material for those kind of girls. And let's see, he doesn't really go into really the ethnic composition very much. As I said, Latvia is a pretty small country, just over 1 million people, and they have, well, most of the people are Latvians ethnically, so from the Baltics. But they did, because they were part of the Soviet Union. They have in the capital Riga, it's about 50-50 set between, say, Latvians and people who are from other parts of the former Soviet Union, particularly Russians. And as a result, what kind of women you're going to see? You're going to see a lot of natural blondes, just in general. I had did another video where I was talking about in Odessa and about Ukrainian stereotypes, and the stereotype is that there's a lot of blondes here in Ukraine. And I think in the center there is, actually I had a map that I looked at, and it's kind of the same here as you're going to find in most parts of Central Europe or other parts of Eastern Europe. Actually, in the south of Ukraine, it's not any higher in terms of natural blondes than Turkey, very, very much so. That's because people in the south of Ukraine have a lot more influence from the Balkans. But here in Kiev, for example, it's kind of the same as going to Poland or going to, say, Czech Republic. But in the Baltics or in Scandinavia, you are going to find more natural blondes. So Latvia is part of that. You are going to see more natural blondes there, either because, well, if they're ethnically Latvian or they're ethnically from somewhere else in the former Soviet Union, going to be a higher probability. So what would I say, just in summary, about my experiences there and what you could expect outside of like the ethnic composition, the fact there are more blondes? Well, as I said, being a foreigner, probably not going to get massive automatic value. It might be a negative if you're British, if you're showing up and you look like you're a drunk sex tourist. It's going to be a bit similar to here. You're going to have to jump out of that box. And also, because it's part of the European Union for a long time, already 70 years, a lot of girls already left, studied abroad, maybe working abroad. Now, of course, Central Europe and the Baltics were more attractive to stay and actually move to, a bit like here, because the standard of living has increased. On the plus side, if you don't speak Latvian or Russian, then definitely you're going to find the level English is a lot higher in Latvia and the Baltics than it's going to be here. A city like Riga, it's going to be dramatically better. I have to think where they were in the education first ranking. They weren't in the top percentile, if I remember, but they weren't far off it. I think they were in the second. Whilst here it's in the fourth, so expected English to be a lot more widely spoken. So definitely, a higher level of English. Just my experience of being there, because it had a lot of ethnic, we'll say, Russians, and it was very kind of had this edgier feel in the past to it than you would have found, say, in other parts of Northern Europe, like Scandinavia. Pretty similar, I think, to going to a city, not really Kiev or Odessa nowadays, but I would say a little bit akin to going to, maybe Dnipro, Kivik, that kind of vibe in the city. A little bit more, if you know what, the Slavic squat, you're going to see a bit more in Riga probably in the past than you're going to have seen, obviously in somewhere like Sweden or the rest of Northern Europe. So a little bit more of a, poverty, income imbalance compared to Western Europe. A lot more kind of rougher feel to it around the edge, a little bit more lawless. I think that's changed quite a bit. Last time I was there, I was actually the center of Riga is extremely beautiful. I have to point out the old town. Really, it's been renovated. It's absolutely stunning. Great to walk around. I did actually have a romantic liaison with a girl who was actually studying there, but she was Russian. She was actually from Russia, and she was studying there. So. Didn't actually really hang with any Latvians the last trip I was on. I had a funny instance where we went and had a beer in a park. Apparently, you're not allowed to drink in the park. I found that out. But anyways, police were kind of friendly enough with me. I tried not to speak to them at all. I pretended I didn't understand what they were saying because they spoke in both in Russian and in Latvian to her. So yeah, basically, I had always a good time. I think it's a little bit more edgy. It did have that kind of reputation, a bit of a sex tourist destination. You have to obviously climb out of that box, just have your wits about you, because they did have a lot of sex tourists. They were used to ripping them off, a little bit like here in Ukraine. You know, if you're seen as a foreigner, a bit of a fool, and there to throw money at the cheap girls, we'll call them, then yeah, could have a bit of an issue of getting scammed and stuff like that. Because it's in the European Union and it's just a lot more frequented, a lot more known, you are going to have a lot more, I would say, competition than coming, say, further east or further south here into, say, Ukraine or to Belarus or to Russia, because it's just, there are a lot more flights, it's a lot more well known. I was saying back in 2006, it's the #1 place for Brits to have a stag party. It's not exactly undiscovered, and there are a lot of foreigners who fly there. I remember being a lot of Italians been around when I was there, for example, and they are of course hitting on all the local girls as well. If you speak Russian, then you know it's going to be an advantage with those who speak Russian. It's going to be about half the city, and then of course you can kind of stand out a little bit easier, as I did on my trip there, which was pretty productive for me. It was about, I think it was about 5 years ago now when I was there last. And being a foreigner, well, they can obviously travel everywhere else in the European Union. I think even Latvians are visa free to visit the US, so they're not really trapped there. Of course, you meet someone if you go to Latvia, a nice Latvian girl, then it's not so much hassle to move back somewhere else. Maybe you might even move over there if you're a EU citizen, not a problem at all. So you don't have the bureaucratic issues that you have here in Ukraine. That's why I actually have my program Slavic Utopia Secrets Ukraine, to help high-level Western guys who want to move here for 3 to 12 months a year to Ukraine, because it's not so straightforward. The downside, it is kind of small, so I think probably Riga is going to be, you know, probably similar. It's like a mid-sized city here in Ukraine. It's not going to be the huge pumping metropolis that is Kiev, for example, or even Odessa, Mama in the summer, or even Kharkiv, which is 1.5 million. So it's going to be more small town feel. You know, girls have traveled more than here. They've had the opportunity to study abroad more and for longer in obviously in Latvia, because it's part of the European Union. So I've always had a good time there. I think you need, as long as you stay out of the kind of sex tourist areas and not get caught up in some scam, and are actually you know, pretty cool, calibrated guy with reasonably high socioeconomic status, you're probably going to do pretty well in Latvia. It's basically like a microcosm of here, except for, yeah, girls can travel more, probably going to speak more English, probably going to be more foreigners. So those have pluses and minuses depending on who you are. So basically, if you're a guy who wants to maximize his potential and 5x his lifestyle in Eastern Europe, it's probably 20 years too late if you go to Latvia. Now is the time. You can still make up for it. You're not that late if you come and do it here in Ukraine. I'm not going to say that there aren't any foreigners. Obviously, I talk about the fact that, you know, Kiev does have more and more Westerners, even a lot of Western girls. When I go to the hipster cafes, I hear a lot of French and Italian accents. People speaking English and Italian, French, actually girls speaking English. So not even that just the foreign guys come here. Actually, there are a lot of foreign girls. Why? Because, of course, here, cost of living is about a fifth of being in Paris or being in Roma in Italy, or being in London. So that is one of the good reasons. If you have been to Riga and you've had an experience that you want to relate to me, definitely drop it below. Said I've been probably 4 or 5 times to Riga in the past, not for the last 5 years. I will go back. I promise I will go back, and I will record actually all 3 of the Baltic states to give you that comparison. My take, I'm going there today versus obviously countries like Belarus, Russia, and Ukraine and Moldova. But in the meantime, let me know how you've gotten on. Maybe you had a great time there. Maybe you had a memorable time for another reason, like you got scammed, or you know, something bad happened. Definitely drop a comment below and give me your 2 cents as well on it. So that is the end of today's Vodka Vodcast. Me, Connor Klein. I'm going to go and enjoy, actually out here it's still pretty sunny, the last rays of sun that are still here glowing strongly on the banks of the river Dnipro in Kiev in Ukraine. And actually the evening I'm shooting this, I know it'll be long past probably by the time I put up the channel, a couple of weeks, but it is the evening of the European Championships semi-final in football between England and Denmark. So I'm going to go watch that with one of my clients who's moved on the program, Slavic Utopia Secrets Ukraine, and he's actually here, and actually another friend of mine. So actually I'll drop a link to that below as well. It's on demand if you are a high-level guy looking to 5x your lifestyle by moving to Eastern Europe in general, but Ukraine specifically. I'll have the program for that. I also have the program for Belarus as well, and Russia will be coming pretty soon. So see you very soon in the next video. Do побачення, до свидання from Kiev, super free Kiev, Ukraine.
SAR Experience.